Today we're going to go over our consumer value rating for Praluent. If you've never seen one of our videos before, our consumer value rating is based on two things. Number one, how good is this drug compared to other options? And number two, how much is it going to cost on average compared to other options? And just as a reminder, this is not medical advice. This is just general information to help people make the best decision for their health based on, what am I going to get and how much is it going to cost me? In some cases, you might be paying a lot, but you might be getting a lot in compared to other options. In some cases, you may be paying a lot, but not getting a lot in comparison to other options. It may not be better. It may, in fact, be less effective than some other drugs that are not that expensive. So without further ado, let's get into the Praluent. Praluent is a member of the PCSK9 inhibitor class of medications, and it has a tremendous ability to lower LDL cholesterol. In clinical trials, it was able to lower cholesterol more than 50% in combination with a statin at the maximum dose. Now, there are a lot of different drugs that are used to reduce cholesterol. The issue is they all don't have as strong of an effect, or they won't be in the range of a cholesterol lowering effect as the same as Praluent. So if you're looking at drugs that will produce a similar result, there are really only two other options. There are statins and there's Repatha. Now with statins, if you're watching this video, more than likely you are already on the maximum amount of statin that you can tolerate, or you're not able to take them at all for some reason. So it's sort of pointless for me to go into a lot of detail about it. So what I'm just going to do, and same thing with the other drugs, there are alternatives, but they typically don't lower cholesterol by such a margin as the statins or PCSK9 inhibitors like Praluent. So I do mention them in the Repatha video, so rather than repeating myself in the interest of brevity, I will just refer you to that video if you're interested in checking out more information. So in short, statins and other drugs are available, but if you are being prescribed this drug, more than likely you can't have the statins, or they're not creating a strong enough effect for you. And those other alternatives would also not likely create the effect that you're looking for, which just leaves Repatha. So Repatha is a PCSK9 inhibitor like Praluent, and it was also able to produce a similar type of effects in lowering cholesterol and preventing death and cardiovascular events. According to the guidelines and studies and information that's out there, there's really no reason to believe that one of these is better than the other. They work very similarly. They have similar types of side effects. They produce similar results in clinical trials. The trials were slightly different, but as of right now, there is no reason to believe that one is significantly better than the other. And all of the guidelines are sort of recommended as the same. They just say PCSK9 inhibitor and don't really have any specific preference to one or the other as far as one being better or safer than the other. There is one little difference between them. The Praluent is available in a lower strength. So for some people that have side effects to the Repatha or the higher strength of the Praluent, can sometimes take this lower half-strength version of the drug, and that often does the trick for people where they are able to tolerate that one. So that's one thing to note as far as the differences. And the other one is that the product, the actual device, doesn't have latex in it. So some people that have a latex allergy won't be able to use Repatha because they use latex in their device. But aside from that, there really aren't any notable known differences. So as far as one or the other, there doesn't seem to be anything to indicate one is better than the other. How are the financials of the Praluent? Well, let's get the generics out of the way first. So with the generics, most of the statins and other generic alternatives for cholesterol are going to be super inexpensive, usually $10 or less. It's going to be fairly rare that there's going to be anything more than $15 or $20 a month, unless it's a very rare cholesterol lowering drug. but most of them are going to be fairly affordable. But again, if you're being prescribed this sort of drug, more than likely those alternatives would not be able to get you to goal, or you've had side effects to them or can't have them for some reason. And again, I will refer you to the Repatha video where I go into more detail, again, in the interest of not repeating myself. So that just leaves Repatha. So how does it compare price-wise against Repatha? Is it better or worse? It's the same, but not quite. And I'll tell you why. So list price-wise, they cost about the same. I would say on average, they have about the same sort of insurance coverage, where there's not one that's way more covered than the other. But there are some key differences between the Praluent and Repatha. Now, what I would say in general is the weakness of Praluent is that they have basically withdrawn almost all support for the drug. There are no sales representatives for this drug, or very, very few. And most of the support programs for doctors' offices and patients have been withdrawn. Now, while they have a lot of very similar programs to Repatha, the reduced support means that you will run into problems a lot more often when you should not. And they're typically a lot more of just a general pain to use. It's a very unpleasant experience in comparison to Repatha's support programs. So one quick example is the copay card. So a lot of you know, for a lot of these brand drugs, you can just go onto the drug manufacturer's website and just download a copay card, and it will reduce your price by a certain amount. Most of them are really easy to do. You go on there and you answer like 3 questions and you get your card. With this one, you've got to surrender all kinds of information, create an online account, and give them your social, which is unheard of, really, for a copay. I've never seen it before. And because of these kinds of things, it makes it hard for, let's say, your local pharmacy or your CVS or Walgreens or your doctor's office to actually help you. A lot of time, if someone has a high copay, the pharmacy will just download them the coupon and just apply it to their copay so it's more affordable. But if they got to have your social, most of the time they're not going to have that information. And even if they did, they're not going to feel comfortable just putting it on a website, even if it is for the drug manufacturer. So that's just one example, but they also have different manufacturer assistance programs for the doctor and for the patient. And typically they're just very difficult to deal with. In comparison to, let's say, the Repatha program, if you had to go through there, it might take a week to get done and then you get your medicine shipped out. With this one, I would say for the same program, it would probably take a month, and it requires way more documentation. And they typically, you send them, let's say, a copy of your tax return or something like that. They typically just ignore the number. Like even if you circle what your income is, they'll just look at some other number and say, oh, I didn't see it, or I never got this fax. It just seems that in my experience, and I wish Scott were here, as a lot of you have dealt with Scott, in our experience, they do whatever they can to avoid helping people because they want you to pay for the drug. And that typically is what happens with a lot of companies. And I mentioned this in the Repatha video, where their strategy is basically to give it away to insurance. They're more dependent on collecting off of you in order to actually make money on a lot of these drugs. So what I would say is, while they have a lot of very similar programs, and on paper, there really shouldn't be a price differential, the fact that there is such limited support, it's so unpleasant to deal with, that it leads to a lot of delays in treatment, and even something as simple as there being no sales representatives. I know a lot of people dislike pharmaceutical sales representatives, but if you're taking a drug, those are the people that drop off samples. So if there's a problem with your insurance, they can give you these samples to hold you over while the insurance issue gets sorted out. And with this type of drug, insurance issues are fairly common. And when you compound that where Repatha has programs that can actually help the doctor with insurance issues, they can contact the insurance, figure out what's going on, these guys don't. And the fact that they don't have samples in case there's an insurance issue, and that they don't have these doctor's office support programs, and if you need to use one of their programs that it's going to be a major pain, leads to people ending up paying more on average. So I would say that Repatha is a clear winner in this case, even though they're the same list price and they have typically the same insurance coverage. The way the system works is that it does not work in your favor because there's so little support. Our final rating for this drug is a 3.5 out of 5. Now, a lot of people might ask, why the 3.5 out of 5 when Repatha got a 5 out of 5 if it's not any better or worse than Repatha, and if it's not any more expensive than Repatha? And the reason is that all things being equal, this drug is just a big pain in the ass to deal with. I personally dread it every single time we have to initiate some kind of issue with resolving the cost of this drug. It's simple to do, but it's just way easier and smoother with Repatha. And this lack of support from the company ends up hitting people in the pocketbook because insurance issues are fairly common with this drug. And very often there is a delay of, could be several weeks to even a month or more because of some insurance problem. And because of that frequent problems that this drug can run into for a variety of reasons, that support is going to be important to make sure that person doesn't end up spending a lot more than they need to, and to make sure that they stay on the drug and there are not these large gaps where they're taking it, they're not taking it. Repatha, it's just way, way easier. But with this drug, very often you're not going to be able to get samples, and you might run into problems where you're just going to have to pay out of pocket, which is going to be at least $500 or more, or you're just going to have to stop taking the drug. With Repatha, it's just a way smoother process. And I feel the company is just less adversarial in general when you do need to go to them for assistance. So it's just a much smoother and easier process. And to be frank, it's just the last thing that people need who are on this drug. I mean, if people have had a heart attack or a stroke and they're not well, the last thing they need to do is to, jerk around for a few months trying to send a fax or something that they claim to not get for months and months. It's just people don't have the energy and not very often cognitive ability if they've had a stroke or have serious reduced ejection fraction or something like that. So overall, I honestly, and I've done a lot of this drug. We've done thousands of requests for Repatha and Praluent. It's one of the ones that we've done the most for. I honestly can't see, if you had the choice, why someone would pick to be on this drug. All things being equal, if there's not a reason to select one or the other due to allergy or tolerability or some other reason, all things being equal, I couldn't imagine why someone would want to purposely pick this drug when Repatha is available. It's that much smoother, that much easier, that much less of a hassle. So I hope you found this video helpful. As always, if you have any questions or if you have special requests for us to do a video on a certain drug, leave the comment below. Please like and subscribe. It does help us quite a bit. If there's ever anything that you need help with coverage, so if this drug is not covered by your insurance or it's too expensive, don't hesitate to contact us at SustainMeds. That's what we do all day. We just help people resolve issues with affordability and access to medications. So give us a call, send us an email, fill out our form. We'll be happy to help you. Hope you found this video helpful. We'll see you next time.